The 1970s wasn't just a decade, it was an entire personality. Loud, electrified, overflowing with hairspray and attitude, it was the era when every kid who learned three chords decided they were destined to become the next Jimmy Page. Garages turned into rehearsal studios. Neighbors suffered. And the guitar wasn't an instrument, it was a belief system. This decade didn't give us riffs, it gave us anthems. The kind you can recognize in 2 seconds flat. The kind your cousin, who can't even play a triangle, still screams, "Turn it up," the moment they start. Today we're counting down the top 10 most iconic guitar riffs of the 70s. The riffs that defined childhoods, first crushes, long road trips, and questionable 2 a.m. decisions. So tune your air guitar, roll your shoulders, and drop the needle on the decade that turned riffs into legends. Number 10, China Grove, the Doobie Brothers. Tom Johnston didn't compose this riff. He stumbled onto it while warming up, like finding leftover cheesecake at midnight. Suddenly, one of the crispest, punchiest riffs of the decade flew out of his guitar like it had been hiding there. The riff isn't arrogant, it's fun. It feels like rolling the windows down and hitting the highway with zero worries. The Doobie Brothers didn't even know China Grove was a real town until fans told them. Peak 70s chaos. But the riff itself, pure momentum. The second it starts, your foot taps, your head nods, and your shoulder bounces without permission. It doesn't open the song, it launches it. Number 9, Sultans of Swing, Dire Straits. Mark Knopfler's playing style is smooth, clean, and cooler than a buttered biscuit sliding across a hot pan. The iconic riff was born after he watched a small pub band proudly announce themselves as the Sultans of Swing, despite being painfully average. The irony stuck with him. He went home, picked up a cheap Strat copy, and created a fingerstyle riff that flowed like water. What makes it iconic is the confidence. Not loud, not flashy, just quietly brilliant. The riff walks into the room, tips its hat, and steals the spotlight without ever raising its voice. Number 8, School's Out, Alice Cooper. If Teenage Rebellion needed a theme song, this riff would be playing at full volume. Alice Cooper imagined the final minutes before the last bell on the last day of school. The tapping pencils, the exploding impatience, the urge to sprint out the door. That emotion became this riff. It's gritty, raw, and overflowing with youthful chaos. Even decades later, radio stations still play it every last day of school because the feeling never gets old. This riff doesn't just sound like rebellion, it is rebellion. Number 7, Ella Grange, ZZ Top. Few riffs have the swagger of Lagrange. It doesn't walk, it struts. Billy Gibbons recorded the riff in one insanely loud take. Engineers joked the volume nearly shook the studio apart. Rooted in Texas blues, layered with grit and style, the shuffle rhythm is addictive and unmistakably ZZ Top. Gibbons' Pearly Gates Les Paul delivered that raw bite. The riff sounds simple, but the groove is impossible to fake. It's the musical version of someone leaning back with their boots up, telling the best story you've ever heard. This riff doesn't just enter your head, it moves in. Number 6, Sweet Home Alabama, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Ed King dreamed this riff.
Come sit beside me.
Literally, while the rest of us dream nonsense, he dreams guitar intros. He woke up, picked up his guitar, and played it exactly as he heard it. No edits needed. The bright, jangly pattern sounds like sunshine itself. Layered guitars create a shimmering wall of sound that defines Southern rock. Even people who claim they don't listen to country rock know this riff. It's timeless, upbeat, and impossible to hear without wanting to join a band. Number 5, Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple. This riff is the reason guitar store employees have nightmares. Ritchie Blackmore used medieval intervals to create a riff that feels ancient and powerful. But the story behind it, even better. Deep Purple watched the Montreux Casino burn after someone fired a flare gun during a Frank Zappa concert. Smoke drifted across Lake Geneva. Someone said, "There's smoke on the water." Blackmore said, "Write that down." The riff is only 4 notes, but that simplicity made it a rite of passage. Every new guitarist learns it. Every guitar teacher begs them to stop. You can't help it. Hitting those notes feels like starting a rock revolution. Number 4, More Than a Feeling, Boston. Tom Schultz wasn't just a musician. He was an MIT engineer building recording gear in his basement. That nerdy brilliance gave us one of the most beautiful riffs of the 70s. The intro begins soft and dreamlike, then bursts into soaring power chords that feel like flying through the clouds. It's nostalgic, emotional, and polished down to perfection because Schultz rebuilt amps, designed effects, and re-recorded until it felt magical. This riff doesn't just introduce the song, it introduces a memory. Number 3, Layla, Derek and the Dominoes. The opening of Layla hits like a confession shouted into the night. Desperate, emotional, unforgettable. Eric Clapton wrote it while inspired by a centuries-old poem about forbidden love. Then Duane Allman entered the studio and transformed everything. The two traded licks like gods competing for the throne. The riff pulls you forward with urgency and tension. Every guitarist who attempts it feels how much raw emotion is packed into those notes. It's not just a riff, it's a cry from the soul. Number 2, Hotel California, Eagles. The haunting intro of Hotel California feels like stepping into a beautiful but mysterious hotel at midnight. Calm, but something is off. The Eagles spent months layering guitars and perfecting the atmosphere. The intro had to be hypnotic, eerie enough to pull listeners directly into the story. Don Felder and Joe Walsh's twin guitar arrangement weaves together like a puzzle, eventually leading to one of rock's greatest dueling solos. But the intro riff itself, it's simple, calm, and deeply atmospheric. It instantly paints the desert highway, the headlights, the heat waves, and of course the shimmering hotel waiting ahead. It also made thousands of guitarists buy 12-string guitars and then instantly regret tuning them. Number 1, Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin. This is the most banned riff in guitar shops everywhere, and for good reason. It's mystical, it's serene, it's instantly recognizable. You can be 2 aisles over trying out drumsticks, minding your own business, and hear someone plucking the first few notes and think, "Yup, here we go again." Jimmy Page crafted this masterpiece in a tiny cottage in Wales. Surrounded by candles, fog, and the kind of atmosphere that makes you wonder if a wizard is going to step out from behind a tree at any moment. He picked up a $25 secondhand acoustic guitar. Yes, the greatest rock riff of all time was born on a cheap instrument, and began finger-picking a delicate sequence that sounded ancient, mysterious, and strangely comforting. The magic of this riff isn't in its volume or complexity, it's in its emotion. It feels like the opening line of a storybook, like a doorway slowly swinging open. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and somehow that whisper is louder than every amplifier on earth. Page layered the guitars using Renaissance-inspired harmony, folk influences, and his signature ethereal production style. The result was a riff that feels suspended between worlds. Not entirely rock, not entirely folk, not entirely human. Just legendary. It remains the most iconic riff of the 70s, and arguably of all time. A riff that has lived for decades, not just in the fingers of musicians, but in the emotions of everyone who's ever heard it drift through a speaker late at night. And there they are. The riffs that didn't just soundtrack the 70s, they shaped it. Riffs that turned garages into jam sessions, inspired lifelong air guitar champions, and crowned the electric guitar as king. These riffs are memories, little electrified time capsules. Maybe they remind you of your first concert, or summers with the windows down, or the first time you grabbed a guitar and thought, I can do this. Now tell me, which riff hits you hardest? Which one still gives you chills? Which one did you try to play and totally butcher? Drop your favorite in the comments. And if you love this ride through the decade of denim and distortion, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.